He told me once that a man only recognizes his destiny when it knocks him off his feet. And she did exactly that. On a cold September evening, crying on my front porch with blood on her knuckles and secrets too heavy for her small frame to carry. They say the plains don't keep secrets for long, but I've lived here long enough to know that's only true if someone's still around to tell them. If you've ever felt like the land was listening, like the dirt beneath your boots remembered things better than the people who walked over it, you'll want to hear this story. And if you believe that fate sometimes rides in quietly and knocks the breath from your lungs, then go ahead and tap that like button, and subscribe if you're ready for more stories about choices that come wrapped in silence, not words. It was the kind of evening that creeps up on you. Amber lights slanting through the barn slats, wind teasing the grass like it had a secret to whisper, and the air just cold enough to remind you that summer was packing its bags. I was wrapping up my chores on the north pasture, fixing a sagging gate hinge with half-frozen fingers, when I first heard the sound. A soft, pitching breath. Not the wind, not an animal, not any sound that belonged to the prairie. It was the sound of a woman trying not to cry and failing at it. I followed it to my front porch like a man stepping into someone else's dream. She was sitting on the steps, no coat, boots covered in dust, a ripped satchel beside her like she dragged it through hell. Head bowed, hands trembling, and there was blood, fresh and dark, smeared across her knuckles like she'd punched her way through something solid. I didn't say a word at first. I just stood there, 6 feet of confusion and dirt-covered denim, watching this stranger leak heartbreak onto my porch. The only thing I could think to say came out lower than I meant, rough like it scraped my chest on the way out. "Ma'am, are you in danger?" She looked up at me then, and I swear to God, her eyes were the kind that held storms in them. Not the wild, lashing kind, but the kind that comes before it hits, where the sky turns heavy and the world holds its breath. She didn't answer me, not right away, just stared, and I could tell she wasn't sure if she was more afraid of whatever she'd left behind or the fact that I found her at all. "No," she whispered eventually, "not anymore. I'm not proud to admit this, but I hesitated. Every inch of me screamed that I should get involved, that something here was cracked open and bleeding, but there was another voice, the one that's been tempered by years of keeping to myself, that told me to shut the door, give her space, mind my own. And yet, I didn't. I stepped closer, careful like you'd approach a wild animal. "You're hurt," I said, crouching beside her, not touching her yet. "Let me help." She flinched then, just a little, and I saw it. Not just fear or shame. It was carved into her posture, coiled up in her muscles. She didn't want to be seen like this. She didn't want to be seen at all. "My wagon broke down," she said after a pause, her voice hoarse from more than just tears. "Back near Hollow Ridge." I walked. I didn't know where I was going. I just kept walking. I nodded slowly. Hollow Ridge was 15 miles away. Flat land. No shade. No water. No one sane would have made that trek alone. Not unless they were running from something they couldn't outrun. "Name's Caleb," I said. "This here's Dunn Ranch. You're safe now, all right." She didn't say her name, and I didn't push. Just helped her to her feet and brought her inside. The house was warm, had a fire already going in the hearth, and the second she stepped over the threshold, she looked like she might collapse. I offered her water first, then a blanket, then silence, which she accepted more gratefully than anything else. She didn't speak much that night. I gave her the guest room and stayed out of her way. But I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat in my chair by the fire, watching the shadows shift and listening to every floorboard creak, every rustle of movement from the hallway. Because deep down, I already knew something wasn't right. Not just with her, something about how she showed up. The blood on her hands wasn't from a fall, and she hadn't been crying because she was lost. That woman was grieving, or scared, or both. At dawn, I found her on the porch again. Different now, hair pulled back tight, knuckles wrapped with one of my clean handkerchiefs, a mug of coffee cradled like it was the only warmth she trusted. I didn't say anything at first, just sat beside her, and that's when she turned to me and said, almost like she was surprised by her own voice, "You don't know me, and I don't expect you to care, but thank you." And I said it again, without thinking. The words just came to me like they'd been waiting all night behind my teeth. "When I saw you crying on my doorstep, I knew I'm gonna marry you." She didn't laugh. She didn't flinch. She just looked at me for a long time, like she was measuring my soul with her eyes. And then she said the last thing I expected. Then I hope you're ready to carry a lot more than just my secrets. When a woman doesn't give you her name, but stays the night in your house like she belongs there, you learn to be patient. Especially if you spent your whole life listening more than talking. It's the land that taught me that. How to wait out a storm without asking why it came in the first place. Still, by the time the third morning rolled around and I still didn't know what to call her, I knew I'd have to ask. Not because I needed the answer, but because it felt wrong not to. She'd spent most of the past day quiet, drifting between the guest room and the porch, always keeping one eye on the horizon. I didn't ask questions, not even when I saw her flinch at the sound of a wagon rolling down the distant road, but when I caught her staring too long at the rifle above the mantel. But I noticed, and when a man notices too much, eventually, he has to speak. That morning, I brought her coffee, black, the way she seemed to prefer it, and set it beside her on the porch rail. The sun was barely up, painting the sky in that pink and gold wash that makes the land feel clean, even if it's not. She didn't thank me, just sipped in silence, like we'd been doing this for years. That's when I sat down beside her and asked, "What should I call you?" She looked at me like I'd asked what color her blood was. But then her mouth moved, slow and careful, like each syllable cost her something. "Lena," she said finally. "Lena Whitaker." She didn't look at me when she said it, and I had this sudden, sharp sense that it might not be true. Not completely, but it was enough. "Well, Lena," I said, keeping my voice low, "you've been sleeping in my house for 2 nights, and the neighbors are already talking." I meant it as a joke, a nudge, but her face went pale. Not embarrassed, terrified. "Hey," I said, shifting forward, lowering my tone. "That was just my way of saying you're welcome to stay. No strings. But maybe you should tell me what you're running from, before it follows you through my door." She blinked fast, pressing her lips together like she could hold the story in by sheer force of will. But when she finally spoke, her voice was raw. "My husband is dead." I didn't say anything, just let her keep going. We were traveling west. New start, new land. He thought he could make a man of himself out here. Prove something to a father who never thought he was enough. She laughed once. It was dry and brittle, like a leaf crushed under boot heel. But the thing about broken men is, when they finally shatter, they do it with teeth. I felt something coil in my chest. "Did he hit you?" I asked carefully. She didn't answer right away, but I could see it in her hands. The way she gripped the mug like it was the only thing tethering her to earth. "Not until Wyoming," she whispered. "Not until the land made him small enough to notice me." She paused, then added, "It wasn't supposed to end the way it did." "What happened?" She looked straight at me then, and there was something cold and fierce behind her eyes now. "He tried to choke me. Middle of the night. We were camped outside Hollow Ridge. I stabbed him with the kitchen knife." She swallowed. I didn't even think. I just reacted. I let the wind fill the silence for a while. It blew light across the prairie, rustling the grass and stirring up the dust like even the earth had to breathe through what she'd just said. "You did what you had to," I said finally. She didn't reply, but I saw something in her posture ease, like a knot in her back had uncoiled just a little. We sat like that a while, and as I watched her, I realized she wasn't fragile, not really. Lena Whitaker was the kind of woman who held her brokenness like armor. The kind who knew what it meant to survive at the cost of innocence, and chose survival anyway. And I knew then, whatever she was running from, whoever might come looking for her, I wouldn't let them take her back. Because there are women you meet and admire. And then there are women who show up crying on your porch with blood on their hands and fire in their eyes. And you know, not because you're in love, not yet, but because they walked out of a nightmare and still looked you in the eye and told the truth. Later that evening, I found her in the barn, brushing my old mare with a gentleness that didn't match the storm inside her. I stood in the doorway and said, "Lena, I've got 2 extra horses and about 600 acres of problems I can't solve on my own. If you're thinking of disappearing again, don't. I want you to stay." She didn't turn to look at me, just kept brushing the mare's flank in long, slow strokes. And then she said, "If I stay, you should know something." I waited. My husband had a brother. He's a deputy in Cheyenne, and he doesn't believe in accidents. The way she said it sent a chill down my spine, not because I was afraid for her, but because I knew I'd kill for her now, if it came to that. "Let him come," I said. He rode in just before sunset, badge glinting in the dying light. dust in his wake like a storm you see coming but can't outrun. Deputy Charles Whitaker looked nothing like his brother, where Lena's late husband had been jittery and cruel. This man was steel-wrapped order, calm as a noose. He didn't knock, just dismounted and stood by the porch rail, like he was waiting for permission to bring the law inside. "I'm not here for games," he said when I stepped out. "A woman named Lena Whitaker fled Cheyenne under suspicion of murder. I've been tracking her for 2 weeks. She's inside," I said, "and she's not hiding." His eyes flicked toward the screen door, but didn't move. "She killed my brother." "She survived your brother," I corrected. "And if you'd heard the truth, you wouldn't be here acting like you lost a saint." He didn't argue, just said, "I need to hear it from her." Lena stepped out behind me, her hand steady. There was no fear in her voice as she told him the whole story. How his brother tried to kill her, how she defended herself, how she ran because she knew no one would believe her against a man with a badge in the family. When she finished, Charles didn't speak for a long time. Then, quietly, "I always knew something was broken in him. I just never thought it'd end like this." He didn't arrest her. He didn't threaten. He just took off his hat and said, "You're not what I expected, Lena. You were right to run. I'll file it as self-defense." And with that, he left. After he rode off, Lena stood on the porch for a long time, staring at the horizon. When I stepped beside her, she reached for my hand. "You still want to marry a woman who came to you broken?" "No," I said. "I want to marry the woman who put herself back together." And she smiled, small but sure. Because some promises are made in words, and some are made the moment you open your door to a stranger and see your whole future crying on the steps.